The Mind Deconstructed, Mental Health and Wellness with Dr. Kaz and George.
I'm Dr. Kaz Nelson, an American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology certified psychiatrist licensed to practice medicine in the state of Minnesota.
I'm your podcast host, George. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Minnesota, but I'm not here to give you legal advice.
The statements of Dr. Kaz and George are not a substitute for medical care, and our opinions are our own. If you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please seek assistance from a professional.
You can contact us on Twitter at MindDeconstruct. On today's episode, nightmares. Welcome back to The Mind Deconstructed. We are on Season 2, Episode 2. I have some nightmares. Are you excited to talk about nightmares?
This is something that really impacts people's quality of life if they are having nightmares frequently, or it can actually ruin your whole day if you were dealing with nightmares all night. And so there's a lot of increasing understanding about nightmares, and so we just want to cover that ground so that people are empowered to do something about those pesky nightmares.
And I guess stepping back a little bit, I'm not sure that what I have actually qualifies as nightmares, but maybe we'll get into that after we talk about our hot topics in mental health. As we sometimes do, this is about celebrities again, because celebrities are often in the news. There are several articles out now about Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande and Britney Spears. We've heard about her mental health struggles before, but how they're all kind of taking steps to address those. What do you think about that, Dr. Kaz?
Well, clearly the amount of stress that fame brings and the amount of responsibilities that they have in managing their careers, not to mention the fact that many of these artists started their performing careers when they were children or adolescents. There may be mental health needs that they have. That would seem likely to me that may be an issue. What I love about this is they're letting the public know about their struggles and even in some cases the type of treatment that they're receiving. And so because these are influential people, because people look up to them in many cases, I'm heartened to see that this is part of the conversation rather than something that public relations people try to cover up or sweep under the rug.
Shouldn't just their vast sums of money prevent any sort of mental health or, depression?
Well, I don't want to minimize the role of money in people's mental health stress. If you're living in poverty or don't have enough resources, that can be extremely stressful and contribute to mental health problems. But we haven't really seen a lot of money or being rich being protective in developing serious mental health issues. And so I think sometimes people think, well, if I only had money, I wouldn't have mental health problems, but that's not true.
Yeah. Talking about nightmares.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about nightmares? What does that have to do with mental health?
Sleep is critical to mental health. If you've ever been up all night with sick kids or had a job that caused you to shift schedules or develop insomnia or sleep issues for other reasons, you know that it's just so much more difficult for you to self-manage and buffer some of the stress and other things that come at you. So we probably don't even talk about sleep enough on our podcast, given how important that is for people. If sleep is disrupted by nightmares, the problem is people feel very helpless about that. If you're not getting enough sleep, you could really make different choices or go to bed early or those kinds of things. But if you're not having quality sleep due to nightmares, people say, well, what am I supposed to do about that? I'm sleeping, but my brain's turning on me.
That's an interesting way to put it. Why would your brain turn on you, or why do people have nightmares?
There's a lot of debate in medicine and psychiatry about the role of dreams and why they happen. But the bottom line is humans and virtually all animals are designed to have a rest phase or a sleep phase. And the issue, though, is even though you're sleeping, that doesn't mean that the brain is turned off. The brain's doing all sorts of work while you sleep. And so depending on the signals that the brain is getting from the body during sleep, it can interpret those signals in a way similar to how your brain would as if you were awake. And so it's a little bit of a cliche, but some people will say, well, I ate some spicy food and then I had a nightmare that night. But that makes sense to me because as you're sleeping, that food is being broken down by your stomach acid and other things and absorbed in your body. And your brain gets exposure to those food particles and other things as a stimulus and says, oh, I'm noticing a signal. What's going on with that? And then the brain does its best to make sense of those signals while you're sleeping.
Now, what do we mean by nightmares? Because I remember very specifically 1 week I had spent a week roofing a house. So a very repetitive, put a shingle down, nail it down, put a shingle down, nail it down, put a shingle down, nail it down. And by the end of that week, I felt like I couldn't get a good night's sleep because in my sleep, I was putting shingles down, nailing them down, putting shingles down, nailing them down. And that was my dream. And it's like, this is not that I wasn't feeling rested. And I was waking up being like, why am I still shingling a house? Or like when you have a dream that is somehow stressful where you're, all of a sudden it's like, oh, why do I have to take care of 19 kids? Where did you know what I mean? Like what happened here? Like, and then you spend your whole night like trying to think about or trying to rationalize the dream or trying to fix the dream. Like, is that a nightmare or is that just what our body does sometimes when we're anxious or other things are happening?
So that roofing example is a great one because your brain just has certain pathways that it will take. And so if you spent a whole week reinforcing those pathways, it made its way into your dreams because those were the brain areas that were being stimulated during the day. And when we talk about what you can do with nightmares, we're going to use the power of that reality in order to actually change the nightmare to make them less scary and less stressful. I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if anyone back in the Tetris days would actually go to sleep and dream about Tetris or putting these little puzzle pieces together. And I've had many a Tetris dream or two based on that same phenomena.
Would you have considered those nightmares?
The term nightmare is sort of a subjective term. So what might be bothersome to one person might not be bothersome to another person. But if somebody tells me that it's disturbing to them or stressful or they feel like their sleep was not restful, I think that could be considered a nightmare or a disruptive dream, even if it was not terrifying in some way.
You don't necessarily need to wake up screaming
No,
in a pool of sweat.
no,
Well,
no. And there is a relationship between nightmares and trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder. Severe nightmares is actually one of the symptoms of that disorder. And that's
those would be more of the scarier kind of dreams potentially, or
sometimes yes or sometimes no, because, and I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes people say, well, I'm having these vivid, vibrant, stressful, energy consuming dreams, but they aren't necessarily related to the events that traumatize me. It's a different scenario. And whether it's similar to the traumatic event or dissimilar, that stress during the day from PTSD can work its way into your dreams at night, and that can still be a symptom of PTSD, even though that content is different.
is having a history of nightmares a symptom for any other mental health disorder, or just PTSD?
That's a great question. I don't know the exact answer on that, but I would say that sleep disruption is a major symptom of a whole variety of different mental health disorders, and nightmares could be a feature of that for some people.
So what are we going to do about nightmares?
Even though it feels very powerless because, hey, I went to sleep. What am I supposed to do in my sleep to change the situation? I want you to know that there are approaches and there are techniques to help reduce the intensity and frequency of these disruptive nightmares. And certainly as psychiatrists, we always want to figure out if there's medicines that can help with this. And sometimes people find that if they get treatment for their major mental health issue, whether it's depression or anxiety or PTSD, and medication is a part of that, that their nightmares actually reduce in frequency and intensity, which makes sense. But there's also approaches that we've tried that are specific to nightmares, and that includes medications like prazosin, which is actually a blood pressure medication. But this has been studied in the VA veterans population who have had their fair share of traumatic experiences and stress. And if we use this blood pressure medicine before sleep, that actually turns down the heart rate and other stress signals in the body. And so there's less for the brain to cue on during sleep. And this doesn't work for everybody who has nightmares, obviously, but for some it does. And because it impacts blood pressure, we have to start at a very low dose and maybe even several weeks get up to a treatment dose that somebody's able to tolerate. So it can be kind of a project, but if it's helpful, many people appreciate this medication approach.
What about just sleep aids? Do those knock out dreams or nightmares or?
Yes or no, but the problem with some of the sleep aids is if your actual sleep architecture is being impacted, and that's why the dreams are going down. So, for example, some sleep aids reduce the amount of the type of sleep in which nightmares occur. And that has other consequences that are sometimes problematic. And so, unless somebody has the type of nightmares that are extremely serious, like some people actually will act out nightmares and kind of sleepwalk or hit people or attack people in their sleep. And that is obviously so serious that using certain sleep aids that just suppress that type of sleep might be necessary. But I don't think that's the best approach for the average person with nightmares.
So other than medication, then, you mentioned a technique. Tell me about that technique.
Yes, I'm really excited to share with all of you something called the Nightmare Protocol.
That actually sounds like a good horror movie.
Yes, Nightmare Protocol. Thank you. You know what? I'm glad this is recorded so we can just patent that, trademark it right now. Yeah. No, the Nightmare Protocol was developed by researchers and behavioral scientists to help with this very issue. And the good news is it's effective and actually doesn't require somebody to, receive prescriptions or be in years of therapy or anything like that. It's something that somebody could do at home if they're really motivated. So step 1 of the Nightmare Protocol, and I can post a copy of this protocol on our blog site at theminddeconstructed.org. But step 1 is to really practice and learn specific relaxation techniques. That might be the paced breathing that we talked about, in for 4, out for 8, or even listening to a relaxation script through a mindfulness app on your phone or something like that. But before bed, practicing these relaxation techniques, what that does is that brings down the signals and stress in your body that's feeding your brain overnight. Then, step 2, you're going to choose a recurring nightmare that you want to work on. This is going to be the target nightmare. Now, maybe your nightmares are a little bit different every night, but if there's a common theme, like you're running from something, or for me, I'm dialing a telephone and mess up the numbers each time I'm trying to call for help and I can't dial the phone properly. So whenever I mess up phone numbers in real life, I have to stop and ask myself if I'm dreaming. But, there may be different themes. Maybe there's somebody who shows up at your door with a gun or something like that, even if the situation is a little bit different.
Don't key up all these nightmares in people. Come on.
People are not fragile. They usually probably have some scary stuff they're dealing with. But pick some recurring nightmare that you want to work on, and that's going to be the target. And now step 3 is very interesting. You're going to choose a changed ending for what happens in that nightmare. And the idea is that this ending is going to occur before anything really traumatic or bad happens to you or others in the nightmare. Essentially, you're trying to pick a change in the script, so to speak, that will prevent the bad outcome from the nightmare occurring. But it can't be anything boring like, oh, I'm running, but I stop running. That's kind of a unremarkable thing. It has to be something kind of magical or fantastic.
Like you get on a plane to Hawaii or
yes,
something
yes.
instead.
A green helicopter drops down and pulls you up out of the situation. Or you reach in your pocket and pull out a rose, and that rose allows you to be invisible. Or you grow wings and fly out of the situation. It has to be something really remarkable, almost like roofing for you in that example. Just something repetitive that you're going to imagine so frequently that it's going to work its way into your dreams.
Your subconscious can remember to hit that part of the script sort
of
thing.
Yes. And make sure it's nonviolent, though. It's not like, you pull out a
gun and shoot
them first or something like that, because that's traumatic in itself. But it should really facilitate safety and reduce stress in the dream. And then in order to really help your brain learn this, you write down the full nightmare with the changed ending. And then the next step is really important.
Ooh, put it under your pillow.
You could if you wanted to. But you're going to pair the rehearsal, the mental rehearsal of this changed ending, plus your relaxations before bed and even during the day. And
So when you're relaxing,
yes,
you're going through your new script or your new.
yes,
Okay.
yep, you have to learn those relaxation skills first, but then you relax your body and then you imagine the script over and over and over again when you're safe. And it's hard to believe that this would actually work, but it does. During sleep, you will actually develop the ability to put this changed ending into what's happening in the nightmare and manage the outcome so that you're safe and no longer sort of impacted by the fear or the stress of whatever's being endured. And I've definitely gotten myself to do that a few times. I'm not somebody who has a lot of nightmares, but particularly for this phone dialing one, when I do that in a dream, I've learned to stop and ask myself in the dream, am I dreaming? And do I need to keep dialing this phone number or can I stop and give it a break?
It sounds like a bar. That doesn't sound very fantastical, but if it works, good.
Well, I'm normally urgently trying to get a hold of somebody for some reason. It's different on different dreams, but for some reason, this typing of telephone numbers is something that challenges my brain, I guess. But you can absolutely induce what's called this lucid dreaming state where you have power in the dream.
Yeah.
And that can make all the difference. And then you can wake up feeling well rested. And when you practice this during dreaming over and over again, the brain learns to even stave off this nightmare state in the first place.
How much practicing do you think it takes before you can kind of work the technique?
Yeah, if you're somebody who has occasional nightmares and wants to practice this, it will take a little bit less practice. If you're somebody who has a nightmare every single night, or somebody for whom the nightmare is different and you're having trouble coming up with common themes, it will take more practice and be a little bit more difficult. But that's okay. It just is what it is. And this technique will still work. You are still empowered in this circumstance.
Okay. Well, we're going to put the technique on the website too, so you don't need to go back and listen to this again unless you really want to.
Hey, why not?
We do have some questions about sleep. The first one being, what if you have really boring dreams or don't dream at all?
That's a great question. And what people who study sleep believe is that all people probably dream, but that they likely do not remember it. And, but I've also met people who say, nope, I'm pretty sure I don't dream. So this is not something that's been the major focus of study because not many people are coming into clinics and things disturbed about the fact that they're not dreaming.
Oh, you had a good night's sleep? Yeah, great. Let's study that.
Exactly. So, maybe future scientists will get there. So I can't provide an answer to that that's really based on science, but the only thing that I could maybe guess is maybe the sleep architecture of people like this, maybe they have less REM sleep, that sleep stage where the dreams occur.
What does REM mean?
Rapid eye movement. So if somebody's sleeping, you can actually, underneath their eyelids, see their eyeballs moving around in their head. And that's very specific just to that stage of sleep when the brain is really active and having dreams. So if somebody's on a medication that suppresses that kind of sleep, they may have less dreams, as we talked about before. But it's also possible that for some reason, the brain is less responsive to body signals during sleep in that person for whatever reason.
Our other question is, in what phase of REM do dreams normally occur? And I don't know much about REM, so I didn't know that there was more than one phase of REM even. But this is a question from our Facebook page.
This rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, usually starts in about 90 minutes or so after one falls asleep. And then throughout the night, the brain cycles through these different stages of sleep 1 through 4. And this REM sleep happens in stage 4. And the interesting thing about this is the heart rate and breathing quickens, and this is where intense or vivid dreams occur because of this brain activity. So dreaming occurs during stage 4, also known as REM.
Any other terrifying or interesting nightmares or dreams you want to tell us about, Dr. Kaz?
I haven't had a lot of these lately, but fish with teeth, you're swimming and they bite you with their teeth,
Oh,
or
goodness.
you're fishing and then something where the fish drags you in the water, or.
Most of my stressful dreams involve wrangling children. So I don't know what that says.
Well, it says that's probably what your brain is spending a lot of time thinking about during the day.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I have weird dreams, just putting that out there.
Okay. So on the next episode, we're going to talk about bipolar disorder.
Yeah, it's a common and very serious mental health condition that you probably have heard about or people probably reference, but that is not well understood. And so this is the perfect opportunity to learn a little bit more about that condition.
Okay, I look forward to that. Thank you for joining us today. This podcast was produced by Kaz and George. Music by Paul.
He's the best.
Contact us and send us your questions on Twitter at MindDeconstruct.